there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelby and today I'm going to be doing my weekly reading wrap up for the 21st to the 27th of January. I feel like this month is going by really fast and I can't believe it is almost February. So I read a total of 8 books this past week, which is pretty good. Some of them were a little bit shorter, so I think that's why I got to read more this week. I read a mix of chick lit and thrillers. Don't think I read any historical fiction, unfortunately, but there's always next week. So I'm just gonna get right into it. I'll link them all down below, as well as my Goodreads if you want to be my friend. And yeah, so the first book that I read is by Jenny Oliver. I've never read anything by her before. I know that she's a British author, and I got it off of Book Outlet pretty cheap a few months ago, and it's called The Summer House by the Sea. And I thought this cover was so cute. It has these like little raised letters, and the title and the cover really drew me in, so I wanted to pick it up. And it was a pretty slow going read for not being like that long. It is about a girl named Ava. 2 bad things happen to her in one day. She gets hit by a bus or a car or something, and she also learns that her grandmother passed away. And so it kind of sparks her to want to reevaluate her life and live it differently. So her grandmother left behind her summer house that they would always go to growing up, and it's in Spain, and so she decides to spend the summer there, go through her grandmother's things, and kind of just get away from all the social media she does, you know, in her regular life. Meanwhile, her brother, his name is Rory, he I think is a documentarian, and some bad things are happening in the public eye due to him, so he needs to get away. So he also goes to the grandmother's house and he takes his son with him, and the siblings work together to kind of go through the grandmother's things. They discover this Cafe Australia, and it's kind of dilapidated and run down. They work on it and make it into a really good cafe, and they learn a lot about their mother that kind of left them when they were younger and just learned a lot of new things. So it's kind of also a love story for Ava. I didn't like this story very much. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. The love story was really lacking, and I didn't really like Rory. I don't know, just this wasn't that great of a book, even though the text is really large and it wasn't that long. I felt like it took me forever to read it just because I didn't like the story. So I might pass this one along, even though it is such a cute book. And then after that, I read Maybe Now by Colleen Hoover. This is the second book in the Maybe Someday series. So I read Maybe Someday, I think in 2017, and I loved it. It's about this couple named Ridge and Sydney, and they get together at the end. And so this book continues with their relationship. It starts, you know, with the same time it left off in Maybe Someday. So it's the night they get back together, and it's basically them navigating a relationship together, her learning sign language. He's deaf, so he's learning to verbalize, and so it's kind of about their relationship, but also it's about the woman Maggie that he broke up with, who he'd been with for 6 years. And it's about her. She has cystic fibrosis, and she has a bucket list she hasn't gotten to check off anything from, and her days are kind of dwindling down in her mind. So it's about her trying to complete the bucket list, and she meets a guy named Jake. He's a doctor. He's also a dad, but she feels like she can't fall in love with anyone because she's kind of a burden and she doesn't know how much time she has left, but she really likes him. So it's about the main couple as well as her. And I thought it would also be about the roommates that they live with, but it really isn't too much. It was pretty good. I really enjoyed getting to see Sydney and Ridge more together and seeing their romance really blossom, and I enjoyed the parts of Maggie navigating her life with cystic fibrosis and falling for the guy named Jake. I wish it had heavily focused on her and Jake because I thought their story was so cute, but it was actually mostly about Sydney and Ridge. So for the fact alone that I really enjoyed Maybe Someday, and I think I had some nostalgia reading it, I gave it 4 stars. Like I said, I wish it was more about Maggie and Jake or the other roommates. Then I would have probably rated it higher, but I still think it is really good, and I got it for free, I believe, on Kindle, so that was a plus. And then after that, I read the 4th book in the Will Trent series by Karen Slaughter, and it is called Broken, and I loved this book. I was really excited. I checked it out for my library, so I just read it on my Kindle. And this is about a college student named Allison back in Grant County, actually. She gets found in the lake by the college there, and it appears to be a suicide, but the first person on the scene, who is Lena, She was a cop in the Grant County series. She discovers that it definitely was not a suicide. She was stabbed in the neck and she was murdered, and it was staged as a suicide. Well, it just so happens that Sarah Linton, the old coroner for Grant County, she was back home for Thanksgiving visiting her family at the time of this murder. And she gets called in because they have a suspect in custody who has a written confession for the murder of this girl, but he keeps asking for Sarah Linton because she used to be his pediatrician. So she shows up and he's committed suicide, and she knows for a fact he couldn't have done this crazy, like, in-depth, convoluted type of crime because he has a really low IQ and is, like, mentally disabled, intellectually disabled. And so she feels like something must have went wrong that he admitted to doing this crime when he probably didn't. So Will Trent gets called in from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to investigate the suicide of this guy because it happened on the watch of the police officers watching him in his prison cell. And they look into, like, the whole murder and the suicide, and Will and Sarah working together, and they realize that the cops are definitely hiding things, and they're definitely hiding a lot. And so this was a great story. I just love how gruesome these are and how in detail they are, and I've fallen more in love with Sarah and Will, and I just really want them to get together, and I think it is a great story. I gave this 5 stars. And then after that, I read Wasted Words by Stacey Hart. This is my second Stacey Hart book that I read, and this is the first in the Austen series, so it is based off of a Jane Austen book. I forget which one it's based off of. I think maybe Emma, from what I remember. So each of the books in this series are based off of a Jane Austen book, so that's pretty cool. This is about a girl named Cam. She is 25. She works at this bar slash bookstore, so it's a bookstore by day, bar by night. She manages it, and she gets to work with her friends, and she just loves what she does. She's a geek. She likes comics. She loves setting people up. She's been a matchmaker since college, so she sets people up in the bookstore and the bar, and she doesn't have a love life, and she kind of just focuses on setting other people up rather than her own love life. Well, she's been living with a roommate named Tyler the past year. He moved in with her when his girlfriend dumped him for being too nice, and he was supposed to play in the NFL, but he got an injury during college, and so he's a sports agent instead. And he's definitely not Cam's type. He's super athletic and more a jock type, and even though he's great and they have an amazing friendship, she feels like he's way out of her league and she wants to kind of stay in her lane. But they both have feelings for each other, and they kind of start this romance even though she doesn't feel good enough for him, and it was really good. I really liked this story. I loved all the different book references, and I kind of liked the opposites attracting kind of deal in this, and I thought it was really good. Like the friends to lovers trope definitely had that in there, so I gave this one 4 stars, and I would definitely love to read more by Stacey Hart in the Austen series. And then after that, I read Pretty Girls Dancing by Kylie Brandt. I saw Sarah from Sarah's Nightstand mention this book in a Kindle haul, so I decided to read it, and it was actually on Kindle Limited, so I just got to read it through there. And it is about a 14-year-old girl named Whitney. She goes missing. She just like leaves her house in the middle of the night and she never comes back. And the cops are basically looking for her. And in that area, there's been a serial killer for the past like decade or couple decades, and I think it's called the 10 Mile Killer, and they're curious to see if this has anything to do with that serial killer. Well, there's another family who lives only a few miles away from the girl who just went missing. They are the Willard family. It's a mom, dad, and a teenage daughter, and 7 years ago their daughter went missing, never to be found again, and they believe maybe the serial killer also had killed her. And so there's this guy, Mark Foster, he's an agent, put on the case to find this 14-year-old girl, and he thinks there's a link between the girl who disappeared 7 years ago and the girl who disappeared now. So he knows that if he finds the girl from 7 years ago, he'll find the current girl. And this was a pretty good story. I really enjoyed it. I thought the mystery was really good. It definitely wasn't a favorite. I thought some of it was like rushed at the end, but I did enjoy the mystery. Even though some of it I did see coming, but for the most part I really enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars because I thought it was unique but not a favorite, or not super, I don't know, not super thrilling, I guess. And then after that, I read one by Denise Hunter called The Goodbye Bride. This is the second book in the Summer Harbor series. And this follows another one of I think the Callahan brothers, the middle brother, I believe. His name is Zach. His fiance left him 7 months ago, right before their wedding, and ever since he's been trying to get over her and move on with his life. And finally he feels like he has, and he's getting on with his life after 7 months, when all of a sudden he gets a call from his ex-fiancee Lucy begging for his help. So Lucy woke up in a bathroom stall. I guess she had hit her head, and when she woke up she had no recollection of that day or anything, but she was in a wedding dress, so she assumed it's her and Zach's wedding day. So she calls him to help her, and she has no recollection of the past 7 months, and she still thinks that her and Zach are together. And when he breaks the news that they aren't, she's shocked and moves back to Summer Harbor and is convinced that she needs to make him love her again and see what he was missing. So it's basically her having amnesia and then falling back in love, and this is really cute. I love Denise Hunter's books. I just love how she makes you fall in love with the whole town and the whole cast of characters, and I really like her writing. And I can't wait to finish up this series with the third brother. I think the last one is called Just a Kiss, and yeah, can't wait to read it. So I gave this one 4 stars. And then my next book that I read is by Annabelle Cantaria, and it's called I Know You. I got it through NetGalley, so I was really excited about that. And it is about a woman named Taylor. Her and her husband Jake just moved to the UK from California in the US for a fresh start. He works and she's kind of staying at home. She's 7 months pregnant, so she's not currently working. She's really lonely, and she spends most of her time on social media, and she doesn't really have any physical friends. So he pushes her to kind of join some groups and talk to people. So she joins a walking group, and she meets some people there. She meets a woman named Anna who is also pregnant, and she wants to make Anna her best friend. And you can definitely tell that Taylor is really desperate, and by the way she's talking, you know something bad is going to happen. So it switches perspectives between Taylor and a stalker. So there's someone that we don't know. They are stalking someone in this friend group online. You don't know who they're stalking because it's pretty vague, just like Memories, but you know someone's stalking them online and creeping on them through the internet, and it's crazy what this stalker finds out through the internet about this person. And so as Taylor is telling this story of her friendship with Anna, some weird things start happening. There appears to be a stalker. Crazy things are happening in her personal life. You just see the cracks in all these people's lives, and you know something bad is going to happen, and you just want to know what that is. And when it does happen, it's crazy. It was a crazy story. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really fast-paced thriller. It wasn't like the most interesting or unique thriller, but I really did like it, and I gave it 4 stars. And then the last book that I read, I finished up today, and I loved it. It is by Paige Toon, called The Last Piece of My Heart. It is about a travel writer named Bridget. She's had a blog writing about her love life, and she wants to turn it into a book, but her agent says she actually has another opportunity for Bridget, and that is there is a writer, an author named Nicole Dupree. She wrote a best-selling book about a travel writer who fell in love with 2 different men in 2 different continents, and the book is a bestseller, but unfortunately the author passed away only 2 weeks after the book published. And there was set to be a sequel, but it never got written because she passed away. So because Bridget is a travel writer and the agent for Nicole Dupree thought the writing style was very similar, she wanted Bridget to write the sequel. So basically Bridget goes to Cornwall and looks at all of her home office notes, and she gets introduced to Nicole's widowed husband Charlie and their little infant daughter April. And her and Charlie form a friendship, and she feels very torn because she has a boyfriend in Australia, but she also starting to develop feelings for Charlie. And while she's going through the notes of Nicole Dupree, she finds a diary, several of them from Nicole's teenagehood all the way to adulthood, and she realizes that her story is kind of based off of her real life, and she realizes one of the characters is much like Charlie and much like another guy she fell in love with when she was younger. And the more time she spends there, the more she gathers research and spends time with Charlie, the more torn Bridget feels between her boyfriend and Charlie, and she feels like she's living one of Nicole Dupree's books. and I loved this. I thought it was just going to be really lighthearted. I guess the kind of overarching plot from the very first page, but that did not like stop me from loving it. I found myself crying. The emotions in here were really real and raw, and I thought Charlie and Bridget were such great characters, and I really enjoyed their stories and learning about their past, so I gave this one 5 stars. Highly recommend it. Paige Toon just writes such good chick lit, and yeah, this one was so feel good, and I wish I could read more about these characters. So those are the books I read this week. I'll link them all down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have been reading, and I'll see you guys on my next one. Bye.